Hey guys, if you like this video, please give a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe so that I can keep bringing content to y'all. The story begins with the presentation of the Demon King and a hero fighting with him, who is saying he was nothing but a loser who always hid himself behind his subordinates. But this one answered that the hero didn't even have the necessary to get to his level to what he trusted, decided to attack, and the demon couldn't defend himself. Everyone was surprised and thought that the hero could easily win, but then they saw the subordinates of the demon arrived. And they were very strong. They were considered as one body and stronger than 100,000 humans altogether. They counterattacked, and from one moment to another, the human army was destroyed. Almost everyone had died. So the subordinates of the Demon King started to leave the place, but their commander, the Demon King, didn't care about it since the only thing he wanted was to kill those humans. One of his soldiers also commented then that one of the commander hadn't arrived yet, one so cruel that could kill a hero with no hesitation. After the war, the Demon King was doing some paperwork, and a guy, who seemed to be the main commander, was telling him he wanted to quit, and the king asked him why, if it was because of his partners or the people or what was it. He explained he just wanted to quit, not for any reason in particular, and even though it seemed like the Demon King would kill him right away for saying that, he fell at his feet and claimed him not to leave him since he was the only person who he could talk to. He asked if he wanted him to dismiss the other commanders of others groups, but he said he didn't have to. The king insisted, asking what was the motive, that someone like him couldn't just quit like that. As you can see, the king respected him so much, and that's because they met when the boy killed a powerful hero, saving the king. And also, if he didn't bond with the boy, he would be probably dead by now. He kept asking why he wanted to quit, but the boy, our protagonist, insisted that there wasn't any reason when, suddenly, blood started coming out of his mouth. The king asked what happened, and he said it was nothing. He was just a little bit hurt because of the battle they had before, but the king got worried and decided to call a doctor to check on him. The doctor said that there wasn't nothing wrong with him, that he was only hurt because of the recent battle, but the Demon King told him that if he died, he would make him responsible for it and kill him, demanding him to give a proper answer. The doctor said that the only thing he needed was rest and promised he would do what he could to save him. The Demon King agreed and told him to take him to a proper place to rest immediately. They did so, and while he was being carried to the hospital, he asked why they were overreacting so much. All of the demons there respected him so much. They all kept complimenting him, and no one wanted to talk to him directly since he was a feared person. Even though he only liked to drink and eat, he thought, not at all the person they were describing he was. He felt so overwhelmed about that since it was all a misunderstanding. He hadn't killed that hero. He had been confused with someone else, and that's why he wanted to leave his commander position so much. Now at the hospital, he asked for a tea and a waitress brought it to him. She was happy because she recognized him and couldn't even touch his hand for how amazed she was. He couldn't understand how a girl couldn't touch such a weak person like himself. After this, the Demon King asked him to rest, so he went to do it, and then he started thinking about how he could run away from there. There was only one thing he knew for sure. If he said to the Demon King that he's not who killed the hero, that he was just a weakling, all of them would kill him. He was sure that once he told them that, everyone would want him as a pet. He couldn't know how they would react, going from a person to what the Demon King kneels to being just a weak boy. After this, we see a boy came into his room. His name's Art, and he's his subordinate, his servant. He had just gotten back from the human kingdom and brought him a cube that was a very treasured object. The protagonist knew it was and thanked him for it since he couldn't get it himself because he couldn't go to the human's kingdom. He was the only one who could bring him things from there. Also, he informed him that the human army was starting to create a new king of soldiers and that he should go talk to the Demon King about it. The protagonist then tells us that this boy had been the only one who he could get along with there. We now see the Demon King, who was reading a letter, and realized something. He concluded that the protagonist wanted to quit because what he really wanted is to fight on a real battle again, since from the last battle he had no one else saw him fight again. So he decided to make a meeting with all of the commanders to talk about something. After this, we see some memories where the protagonist was on the battlefield with the Demon King and asked him if he was his enemy, to what he said he wasn't, and offered him to become a commander of his army. The protagonist accepted. This is how the protagonist, being a human, ended up on the demonic kingdom. Back to the present after the Demon King made his decision, he ordered a servant to call all of the commanders to a room because he wanted to tell them something. The protagonist was told that he had to go to the commander's room, and he wondered why, if the Demon King himself had sent him to rest, was now calling him to go there. He was going, convincing himself that in order to pretend he was who they thought he was, he would have to pretend to be strong. Some soldiers outside the room started talking about him and how there were rumors that he had killed the hero, and he was a bloodthirsty, the most feared demon, the second brother of the Demon King. He had said the name of the protagonist wrong, so this corrected him, and everyone thought he would kill him for that mistake. Everyone was so scared of him, because he was the only one who knew he was 100% weak. To pretend he wasn't, he went to the room with a very scary face so everyone would fear him, and that way no one would mess around with him, giving them no chance to suspect he was actually weak. Once he got there, he asked them to please open the door for him, as he was some kind of eminence. Once inside the room, everyone was seeing him with different eyes. He saw how the king was seeing him in a way he wasn't. That contrasted with the rest of the commanders, who were saying that he didn't seem as strong as everyone said. A commander even said he wanted to try to fight with him, but another one said that there wasn't any reason to fight, even more between commanders. A girl that was there, on the other hand, said that no one would mess around with the protagonist because she wanted him all for herself. The Demon King finally spoke and said he had invited everyone because he had something to tell them. He served wine to everyone and they all got happy with it, and our protagonist was the happier. One of the reasons he had to be on that kingdom, it's the wine. Once he tried it, he got mad. Not mad, but surprised. He thought he had been finally discovered and that now he would be dead. It turns out the drink wasn't wine but grapes juice, and he deduced they gave him that soft drink because they knew he was weak. Making things worse, the Demon King started saying he knew everything and that he didn't have to hide it anymore, to what he was shocked and thought he was screwed. How would he make it out of that situation? But then the Demon King told him that he served the grapes juice to everyone because he was feeling bad and he didn't want to humiliate his most precious soldier, so he decided to change wine for grapes juice. He asked him for forgiveness, saying he had prepared that drink himself for him. Then he went straight to the point, started talking about some demonic creatures he had created that were a failed experiment. One of the commanders interrupted him to comment that he had come to that place where those monsters were but couldn't even touch them. The Demon King, thinking the protagonist wanted to fight so much, asked him if he wanted to go. The protagonist knew that if he went to that place he would die for sure, but this was his only way out. One of the commanders sincerely advised him not to go there because he could die, since he looked so weak. The Demon King was surprised for this advice and ordered them not to mess around with him because he wasn't so weak as he seemed. That when he gets mad he's a bloodthirsty. The protagonist thought he knew the truth and that he was exposing him to everyone. Everyone started doubting if he was actually strong or not. One of the commanders, arguing he didn't look as strong as the Demon King said, made the protagonist mad, so he asked him what he wanted, that if he wanted to fight him. The commander said it wasn't that, but since he was such a weak human, to pretend to be so strong was mediocre, that he couldn't believe any of that. He didn't get along with him very well, and then some other commander, trying to defend him, said that appearances can fool. The protagonist knew that if he rejected the Demon King's request his weakness would be revealed, and since everyone expected him to say yes, it kind of was his only option. He accepted, and one of the commanders told him he would only go on that mission with a small army since he was so strong. He knew he was screwed. On both of the kingdoms he was on a bad situation. On one of them there was his brother, the emperor that hated him to death and that sent him to kill the Demon King knowing how weak he was. And on the other hand, there was the Demon King that wanted to kill him for sure. On his way to the mission he wanted to ride a horse, but he knew that wouldn't be a good idea because he had taken a wine and wanted to drink it all by himself, so he decided to stay inside the carriage. A guy outside of it was scared because he thought the protagonist was mad at him since he rejected the horse he offered him. But the protagonist was so far away from that. He just wanted to drink his wine on peace with no one there to bother him. But this soldier wanted to take care of him because if he died, all of his family will be killed. To look after him was his mission. The scene changes and we see they're already on the city where the demonic monsters were. They were getting there and saw some crushed, dead, eaten people. They got scared, but they knew they were with him, the strong protagonist, so they decided to get more into the city when, suddenly, the guy started saying they should go back because all the monsters had arrived and they didn't plan to die there. The soldier told everyone to take positions to kill them and ordered not to let any of them alive. So the massacre of monsters began, but these also had axes and swords so they could defend themselves pretty well. The army tried their best to attack them, but they were so many, the more they killed, the more they would keep coming up. The soldier got worried because he was supposed to be who would help the protagonist, and if he couldn't do it, he would be killed. A monster was about to attack the wagon where the protagonist was, so this soldier went there to defend him, but he wouldn't make it. The protagonist would be killed before he could help him. The monster was way too big, so even if the soldier managed to reach him, his swords fall down to him. The soldier knew it was his end, but he would still try to protect the protagonist however he could. The scenario changes and we see the Demon King with one of the commanders who's asking him if he sent another commander or someone else with the protagonist. But he said he shouldn't worry because that boy had extraordinary abilities, that he could even kill him on a second. Back to the city where the battle is happening, we see that the monster wolf broke the wagon, but a boy with gray hair came out of it and cut the monster. Everyone saw this and wondered what had just happened. Then we see that the person who killed the monster was our protagonist, and they were surprised because they didn't know they have a commander with such abilities with them. They started asking him for forgiveness, calling him sir, and the protagonist asked his classy question when he was on this mood. Who was his enemy? The soldier answered that, clearly, the monsters were his enemy. But the protagonist wasn't asking exactly that. He asked again if he was his enemy or not, to what the soldier, afraid, said that he wasn't, that he would never be his enemy, and while that, he raised his sword at him on an attempt to defend himself. To this, the protagonist said that if he didn't put that sword down, he would kill him. After that, he looked at his side and saw the monster was getting up and preparing to attack him again. And seeing that, he said that it seemed like he had found his enemy. With an extraordinary ability, he started connecting a lot of punches. The soldiers behind them were amazed because they didn't think those rumors about him being so terrifying were true. But now they had seen the true. Then the monster gave a punch to him that left them on the floor, and he said that now, he would fight him and destroy him. The monster attacked him and the protagonist counterattacked and made the monster dust. Another thing the Demon King had said before was that, when the protagonist kills an enemy, he would keep crushing them without fearing anyone who could be seeing him, so that's why his ability was the best. The protagonist started taking the monster's guts out and were explained on the meantime that this ability is called Crazyness, which gives you the power of 1,000 demons. Everyone behind him was scared and didn't even want to get close to him because they knew if they did they'll end up on the other side. Even the monsters were terrified because they had never seen a person like that before. They tried to run away, but he would stop them to kill them. We're at the Empire now and see the protagonist's brother, the Emperor, asking to one of his spies what had happened. This one said that there was a person who was killing all of the monsters and who was considered the strongest commander of the Demon King, that his face reminded him of a person. But he doesn't say who. Then the king asked to a subordinate if he wanted to become the new ace of the Empire, and this one said that yes, it would be his honor. So the Emperor sent him to the training cult, which would make him worse than the person they've been hearing about. We see that, on the battle, the protagonist had already killed all of the monsters and said to the soldiers of the city that if they didn't leave he would also kill them, but then the protagonist came back to reason and remembered all he had done and got in shock. The protagonist has also another special ability I didn't tell you about. He forgets everything, but on this moment he remembered all the people he had killed before and passed out because of the shock, especially because the hero he had killed was his friend. He couldn't understand who was controlling him to do all of those things and what was happening with him. When he managed to wake up, he wondered if all that had happened was real, or just a dream. He woke up on a different room and asked to a person there what time it was, to what the person asked him if he remembered something of what happened, but he said he only remembered he'd been sent to a mission. We see the other person was the demon's doctor, who asked him if he's okay. He said he was, but that he didn't know what happened to him. There they explained he had killed a monster of S category and he can't believe it. He can't remember anything anymore, so he deducted they had confused him again with someone else. Again, they asked if he didn't remember anything and he said the only thing he remembered was that he stole the wine and drank a little bit of it. After that there was nothing on his memories. He couldn't understand what was happening, why everyone keeps saying he was a cruel enemy and who could be that person so like him everyone would confuse him with him. Suddenly, a memory of the battle came to his mind, but he ignored it, knowing he wouldn't be able to do something like that since he was so weak. The doctor came in and told him he was looking better and asked again if he could remember something now, but he said he didn't. One of the protagonist's subordinates was there, the one that would always bring him things from the human kingdom. He said that he was amazing and that he had never seen a person like him before, and to please help him to become as strong as him. But the doctor stopped him, saying that it didn't matter how much he would work for it. He would still be an asshole. Suddenly, some people arrived and he asked who they were and why they looked so cranky. Those were two commanders of other groups. One of them was a girl, very shy but that liked to talk with the protagonist. And the other one, instead, was a guy that liked to fight with him. They came to ask if the protagonist was feeling better and he said he was. Then the commander of the group number 1 arrived and asked to the protagonist why he would always pass out on his battles. One of them there wanted to fight with him, but when the protagonist looked at them with a normal face, they felt it was scarier than it actually was. The protagonist said if he wanted to die he could do it. He could fight with him. They said to themselves they should be careful around him because he was scary, and this one, on the other hand, thought he should be better from now on because otherwise those people would kill him. One of them invited him to fight with him, but he said that if he wanted to fight he should be decided to die as well, and he got surprised with this. And is at this point where we're explained that the protagonist has dual personality, being one of those the terrifying one and the other one, the silly and weak one. After this, we see the protagonist said to the commander that he didn't want to fight with anyone, that he just wanted to rest. So he said he felt weak to fight with him right now anyway, so he could become stronger to be able to fight him on the future. But that wasn't the protagonist's goal, because if that guy became stronger it would be even harder for him. But even though he tried to stop him, the commander was decided. They would fight to death or nothing. The only ones happy with this were the subordinates, who thought it would be fun fight to see. After that, the protagonist passed out and knew that his plan had failed. He was angry because he didn't want to fight with him. He just wanted to live a normal life. He was on the demonic world only because of the alcohol, thinking he would be a simple human living there. But now this curse had come to him. Furious for this whole situation, he threw a stone that ended up beating on someone. The goblin that received the beating turned and asked who had punched him, but then they let it pass because they only wanted to keep punching a girl. Then they said they wouldn't carry the girl with them, but that they would let her with him. The protagonist looked at her and asked her why she was like that, and she thought he was looking at her with repulsion, but once she raised her eyes, she saw he was actually just trying to help her, being nice. So after he extended his hand to her, she took it and asked him to please not to punch her or anything, and he said he didn't intend to. They were so alike. She was weaker, but since he was a human, they were almost the same. To thank him, she asked him to go together to the garden, because she was a gardener, and when he heard that, he realized that on the demon world there were only monsters and nothing fertile. He wondered how the garden of this kingdom would look like. Meanwhile, we see the Demon King was looking for the protagonist, thinking he was already on his room. Back to the protagonist and the girl, we see she asked him to follow her and not to worry about anything, because she had everything resolved already. But he said he wasn't sure because he had some things to do. But she kept insisting so much she ended up convinced him to go with her. He wanted to see if his expectations about the garden of the demonic world were true. She quickly took him to the garden, and to his surprise everything that existed on the human world was also there, but when he got close to a beautiful flower, it opened its mouth and tried to eat him. He asked her what was that about, and she said that it was a flower that got violent out of the blue, and with a killer look, she said to the flower that if it kept like that she would have to kill it. The protagonist concluded he was right. On the demon's land nothing was normal. He said he would have to leave now, but she asked why, and he said he had to train and leave as quickly as possible. She tried to convince him to stay, but this time she couldn't, and after he left we see the girl talk to the flower and said to it that it shouldn't worry. He could come back and they would give them a better surprise than this one. The protagonist knew there was something wrong with that place and felt that if he stayed he would probably die. He went to his room but started hearing on his head the voice of his butler saying that he had to train, so he decided to do it. He went to a place with armors to train, but when he held a sword he realized it was too heavy for him, so suddenly he started taking a posture he didn't even want to take in. When he dropped the sword, because it was so heavy, everyone got surprised because he was looking as an eminence among the shadows. He was, again, being the attraction for the demons, and everyone started asking what he was doing. If he was training, but he, trying to avoid any trouble, said he didn't have anything to do there. He was leaving immediately, but then he stumbled with a rock, and when he turned he saw someone was trying to kill him behind him. The killer started saying he would kill him, and the protagonist was shocked, wondering how he managed to dodge that attack. On an attempt to defend himself, he tried to hold the heavy sword, but he couldn't, so instead, he punched him with his elbow on the face. Then he managed to hold the sword and scream that everyone should leave. Lucky for the protagonist, because he was holding the sword, it seemed like he would kill him right away, but it wasn't what it seemed. What actually happened is that the sword slipped from his hands, and with that impulse he managed to give a mortal punch to the killer. After that he told everyone to take the body to the Demon King so he would investigate what happened. Everyone felt ashamed because they were there to train, since they were from the Zero group, but couldn't even see there was a killer among them. Also, they commented the precision the protagonist had to dodge and attack the criminal at the same time, but they didn't know he had only been lucky. Amazed with him, they decided to train even harder to reach such an eminence, so they started training right away, encouraging each other. Meanwhile, the protagonist was outside the room wondering what had happened before and how he ended up being an eminence when he only tried to hold the sword, with no success. The investigation had been made and the Demon King appeared to tell him everything he knew. He said they should go to the dungeon to talk about all the information gathered. He asked what was going on, but he said he would realize it once they were there. They were now in the dungeon, and the Demon King showed him who the killer was, and it turned out it was a hero. He got his powers because of a fragment the hero released, the one the protagonist had killed on the beginning. And also he said that the Empire was creating a new army made only out of heroes with those fragments. After this, the Demon King was about to start an interrogation, but was interrupted for the protagonist, who started losing his conscience. Every time he passed out, he would change his personality, so he was now his terrifying version. Out of the blue, he started saying to the Emperor that he would kill him, and that if he was seeing them through that hero, that he would kill him. The protagonist started saying to the hero he was a fool because the Emperor had used him, sending him there and abandoning him later. They thought only a hero could kill the Demon King, but those were only rumors and that he was now screwed. To what the hero, trying to defend himself, said that the Emperor hadn't abandoned him. The protagonist started saying everything the Emperor did to him, and since he was a governor of that land before, he knew everything and explained it to him. Then the hero realized everything and screamed with pain, asking why the Emperor had betrayed him like that. He started crying, and the protagonist said to the Demon King that they could kill him after a few questions he would ask. The Demon King told him he had an important mission to him. Since the human kingdom wanted to take a piece of the demonic kingdom, the protagonist should go there to defend their land, but that he should be careful when he was there because another powerful hero was on that territory. Since the protagonist was on his other personality, he agreed to go and said he shouldn't worry about him and that they should quickly kill their prisoner because the Emperor could be listening all through him. Back to his lame personality, the protagonist was surprised for what he was seeing now, since the last thing he remembered was being at the training camp, trying to hold a sword. But now he was on a mission, not even knowing what it was about. His butler arrived and told him that they will travel together on the mission since it was a very important one. The protagonist decided that he would take the opportunity of this mission to escape of that place, and to go to the human land, since if he stayed there he would be dead, sooner or later. Then the commander of the Demon King's army arrived and told him she had an important gift for him. He felt if he got involved he would die, but the girl had quickly took the present and gave it to him. It was a necklace. She said that it would save his life because, when he was in danger, it would break avoiding his death. He took it and thanked the girl because it would be very good for his mission, and she was happy to hear that. The protagonist's butler and she started exchanging their love for him, and she asked him to take care of her future husband, but the protagonist told him he could stay if he wanted. We now go to the past and see some memories from before the protagonist arrived to the demonic kingdom. It turns out he was with the hero, the one he ended up killing later, because the Emperor had sent them to kill the Demon King, but they weren't sure about doing it. The hero said to the protagonist he should stay because it would be dangerous, but he didn't want to because he was a good person and it could need his help. But even though he didn't want to, he ended up staying because it was too dangerous for him who was so weak. The hero said he shouldn't worry because he would come back for him. After this, some hours passed and he hadn't come back, so he decided to go see what happened. He had to hide very well not to be seen on the battlefield. Once he got there, he saw the hero had lost and that the Demon King and his army had destroyed him. He wanted to help him, but it would be too dangerous. When the Demon King was about to kill the hero, some energy started coming out of him. It was the power that had protected the protagonist. When he saw this, he decided to run away, but a commander of the Demon King had appeared behind him, one of the most powerful ones. He took his sword trying to defend himself, but it was useless. The monster was way too strong and sent him to fly with only one punch. The protagonist tried to dodge the accurate shots the demon was throwing at him, and meanwhile, the monster was saying to him he was an outlander and that he would kill him. The only thing the protagonist could do was dodge those attacks, but he received some of them. He had to figure something out right away. After dodging several attacks, he decided to jump and to stick his dagger on his neck to kill him. But it didn't work because the attack barely hurt the monster, since he was too big and his skin strong. So he planned to run away, but suddenly the floor broke and both of them fall. This was a relief to him because he fell above the monster, so this one received all of the impact. He tried to leave that place as fast as possible, and some people that were down there saw him and were amazed because of the strength he seemed to have. Destroying such a big and powerful monster, the commander of the Zero Group had been defeated by a small human. They asked who that person was, since this monster was considered the strongest of the army. The protagonist wanted to leave, but everyone was surrounded him, amazed by the strength of that human. He started seeing around him and realized he was in front of the Demon King. So he decided to leave, but then he saw the hero was still alive. He went at him, but this one told him it was better for him to leave. And then he tried to transfer all of his power to him, but it didn't work, since the protagonist only threw away that power. That's when the power was divided on fragments. Fragments the Emperor was now using to make more heroes. When the Demon King saw all of the light of the power in the fragments, he thought the protagonist had protected him, killing the hero. All the power the hero had transferred to him ended up hurting him. So blood started coming up of his mouth, and when the Demon King saw this, he asked him to go with him and become his subordinate. Having no more options, he decided to go with him until he could get the opportunity to run away. The Demon King also said that he would now be the commander of the Zero Group. After this, we see the protagonist arriving to the battlefield, and the commander that was there was surprised seeing he was smiling, being on a dangerous place like that, where everyone could die at any moment. The commander told him to stay inside because they would fight against the hero, so he should rest. The protagonist asked to his butler to cover him with bandages since he didn't want to kill in front of the humans, so he would be a mysterious killer. We see now a killer on a tree who's saying he was there to kill our protagonist because he had heard rumors about him being the strongest of the Demon Kingdom, and he wanted to prove if those rumors were true. So he started throwing a needle at him, but luckily the protagonist dodges it because he accidentally fell down. The killer was amazed because of his abilities and wondered if he had actually saw the needle. The protagonist said to his subordinates that he was training and that they shouldn't worry about anything, so when the killer heard that, he thought he dodged the needle by accident, but also that he didn't want to call anyone's attentions and alarm them of an enemy on the area. The protagonist went to drink some wine and asked his servant to serve it to him. The killer realized, when he saw this, that the protagonist probably hadn't realized he was there. He was now decided to kill him. The protagonist said he felt someone was observing him, but decided to let that feeling go away and asked to his subordinate to drink something with him. After that, he started saying that there was fly on the wine, so he didn't want it. He asked his servant to kill the fly instantly, and this asked what was happening when he saw the killer running away. The protagonist said he saw a fly and let his glass fall, and then he asked for another drink to his subordinate, but this one said that there was someone around who had put some poison on the wine, so he asked to his master to stay behind him. The subordinate perceived rests of the killer's presence, who had run away scared because he saw how strong the commander of the Zero Group was. The protagonist and his subordinate explained to the chief commander that he had almost been killed for an unknown person, so they decided to give special attention and to look after the protagonist. Meanwhile, the protagonist said to his subordinate that the glass was probably the only thing poisoned, so he decided to drink the rest of the wine. On the other hand, there's a hero who's talking to someone that's saying how dangerous the commander of the Zero Group was and that it was better for him to be hidden. But he said that from now on they wouldn't have to fight him, but they did have to go since those were the orders of the Emperor. One of the subordinates insisted on not to go because they would lose too many soldiers, but the hero would go forced by the Emperor. Meanwhile, another subordinate arrived with information about that commander. He said the commander of the Zero Group had started to attack already, and the hero asked if the humans had attacked the demon. To what he answers that the commander, getting crazy, destroyed all of them. We're now with our main characters and see how the protagonist, after drinking the whole alcohol, started acting crazy. There was a human who appeared there and he started questioning him, saying that if he didn't want to die, why was he still on the floor? Because if he did want to live, he should fight, since who doesn't fight doesn't survive on this life. The human said he was crazy and that he wanted to leave that place. So the protagonist said to him he would end with his suffering. And when he was about to kill him, a light appeared and someone quickly attacked him. The human took the opportunity to get away and thanked his hero for saving him. On the other hand, the protagonist's subordinate went to look after him and saw he was very hurt, and realized he would probably be dead if it wasn't because of the necklace that girl gave to him. The hero started talking and said he won't have pity for anyone there because the demons were who attacked the humans first. Meanwhile, the protagonist said that he didn't want the necklace to just disappear because he appreciated it a lot, and asked his subordinates to leave the place since that hero would kill everyone that was there. The human who was saved for the hero was running to him, but then the protagonist killed him, saying that he would kill who stood on his way. And then the battle between the hero and the protagonist began. The protagonist said to the hero that if he showed his face he would let him live, but he answered that he didn't owe anything to a demon. The attacks between them were amazing. The protagonist was faster and the hero knew it, because even if he had become so powerful, he was nothing compared to that demon. So he focused on dodging the demon's attacks and also ordered his partners to leave the place. But the demon said he wouldn't let anyone go out of there. Their attacks increased their intensity, crushing each other with great speed. While they were fighting, the hero asked to his subordinates to attack with him, and this way they managed to hurt the protagonist. But he didn't care about his damages. He said that if he would die there, he would take him with him. But after some exchange of attacks, the protagonist advised him to leave the fight. The hero said he wouldn't take any advice from a demon and kept attacking, but he said that it would be actually better for him to stop fighting since his subordinates were hurt, and that his, instead, were still good. So if he wanted his men to die, then he could keep going with the fight. Hearing this, the hero turned to see his army and saw how destroyed this was, so he decided to leave. But no, without telling him first that sooner or later he would kill him. And the protagonist said he didn't care because as soon as he could kill more and more humans, he would be happy. The demons celebrated the victory of their commander, and meanwhile, another commander that was there asked him why he let the fight since the victory was his and what was going on with him since he wasn't saying anything. And when this commander took him from his arms, the protagonist fell down and said he wasn't feeling so well. He was very hurt and with a high fever, and even like that he managed to fight with greatness. He could have even killed that hero, what surprised the other commander. The protagonist asked them to take him to a place to rest because he wasn't feeling good. The chief asked them to take him to another place and to take care of him, that he would fight with whoever he needed now to protect their zone. The demon who had given the necklace to the protagonist got worried and asked them to take her to the battlefield. But her subordinate asked her why she was so exalted, and she said that it was because the protagonist was in danger, and if he died, all of them would also die. Some days passed and the protagonist was on the demon kingdom again. He asked the demon king why he had sent him on that mission, and he answered it was because he was strong and because he knew there was someone familiar there. The protagonist asked him for a favor then, and this, happy to help him, asked him what he needed, and he said they should talk alone because he didn't want anyone to see them talking. Now in the king's room, he explained to him that he needed to go to the human kingdom because he had family there, someone he wanted to kill. Hearing this, demon king allowed him to go. The girl that liked him was crying because she thought the protagonist was dead. Because when she went to the battlefield, she couldn't find him, and the only thing she heard about him is that he drank something and that he got crazy after that. Seeing he was okay, she hugged him and said she was so worried for him. Then she explained him she had a lot of useful objects like the necklace and that she would give all of them to him so he could stay there on the demonic kingdom. But he insisted that he had to go. He said he would come back soon. It would only be a visit to his dear brother that was on the human kingdom. He wanted to see if the emperor had become a hero or something because he heard a voice before that sounded familiar to him. His brother always bullied him and forced him to kill people, and that was the reason why that second personality on the protagonist appeared, even though he didn't know he had those two personalities. He was decided to make him pay for everything he'd done to him, and he would now go there to take his revenge. He asked the girl not to worry for him because after he came back they would go have a drink together and have a lot of dates. She instantly smiled, happy for what she heard. The protagonist was preparing to go, and after changing and all, he said to the demon king he didn't have anything else to do, so he would leave already. We see that the king said everything was ready for him to live and gave a seal to him that was like a curse. If the protagonist betrayed him, he would instantly die, and it was also kind of a microphone that would allow him to listen to everything he said or hear. After that, the protagonist got ready to leave and said to his best subordinate that it was better for him to stay. And this one said he would do it because he received an offer he couldn't reject. He would become a commander. He wanted to serve the protagonist, but the demon king had asked him to stop serving him. He said he didn't care about the position of commander since he wanted to be with his commander who was his friend and his chief. But he couldn't reject the king's offer, and also he concluded that he could accept the position of his chief if he didn't care about it. The protagonist was okay with it and asked him if there's something he wanted from the human's kingdom, and he said that he didn't. But he said he would choose something to give him anyway and that he shouldn't worry about him, because later on he would be back on the demonic kingdom. Then he said goodbye and that he would finally leave, that he would be back sooner or later, so they shouldn't sorry about him. The last scene we see is the resplendent figure of the protagonist leaving the demon's kingdom.